Welcome back, squad. Today I want to take a closer look at two characters I find both reprehensible and endlessly fascinating. Melkor, the Vala who introduces evil into Arda, and Feanor, the mightiest of the Eldar, creator of the Silmarils and architect of his people's downfall. These two characters are well known for their mutual loathing, but they have a surprising amount in common. Obviously, they share several of the negative characteristics that are common to morally suspect characters in Tolkien, like pride, ambition, and rashness, which eventually become greed, resentment, paranoia, and madness. But there's also a bunch of odd little coincidences they have in common as well. Both at least start out as the most talented member of their race. Both are the eldest in their respective families, and both have a younger brother who assumes the role of king when they prove themselves unworthy of the title, a fact that drives both of them into absolute fits of jealousy. Both are particularly interested in and skilled with languages, both are heavily associated with fire, and both become obsessed with light. But the point of similarity that I find most suggestive is that, at least in the beginning, both are noted as highly original and creative, each on a personal quest to bring to life ideas never before conceived. Feanor is named as the inventor or deviser of a ridiculous number of innovations in pretty much every field you can think of, from his refinements of the Tangwar writing system to the Palantiri to his ultimate creation, the Silmarils. The seeds of Melkor's rebellion can be found in his fruitless search to locate the secret fire, the mysterious quality that allows Eru to give concepts and ideas independent reality. His discord stems from an effort to bring matters of his own imagining that were not in accord with the theme of Iluvatar into the music of the Ainur, ignoring the inherently collaborative nature of the undertaking. This is definitely a theme you can find woven throughout all of Tolkien's work. The most creative characters and peoples are the ones most likely to develop excessive pride as a result of their gifts, leading to some kind of moral downfall. Sauron and Saruman, two of the most notorious corrupt Maiar, both originally served the Vala Aule, the master of all crafts. Aule himself, though he ultimately represents the good side of this trait, has a lot in common with Melkor. Both desired to make things of their own that should be new and unthought of by others, and delighted in the praise of their skill. Aule also comes close to falling into the same trap Melkor does, going so far as to try to create other living beings in secret. The Noldor, pupils of Aule and the most inventive clan of elves, are also the most restless, ambitious, and warlike. Feanor's son Crúthyn, the Crafty, who inherits most of his father's skill, is the most villainous of Feanor's many damaged offspring. Crúthyn's son Celebrimbor and the Gwaithí Myrdain readily fall prey to Sauron's deceptions in the Second Age. Even Eöl and his son Maeghlin, the closest examples to entirely evil elves Tolkien gives us, are also both skilled smiths. Such craftiness is of course not the only trait that can lead to corruption in Middle-earth. Really, you can find examples of almost any pronounced character trait becoming a motivation for moral transgression. Gandalf and Galadriel are both tempted by their pity and desire to spare others suffering. Denethor and Boromir suffer from misplaced patriotism and pride in their heritage. But still, it's clear that Tolkien closely associated originality and creativity, the desire to make things, with evil tendencies. And this seems a little odd at first. Creativity seems like such a benign thing. There's plenty of messages in folklore and fiction about the dangers of physical beauty, material wealth, intellect, or political authority leading to the hubris that is almost always associated with intellectual and moral failure. But in my experience, simple creativity for its own sake, that is, not used in the service of an already presumptuous or malicious motive, is typically treated as neutral or even positive. Unbridled curiosity and the lust for pure knowledge is the most similar concept I can think of that is regularly made the subject of cautionary tales, but Tolkien always distinguishes knowledge from craft, even in his constructed languages. And he definitely singles out the desire to make things as being more dangerous than the desire to know things for their own sake. And this is particularly surprising given that Tolkien himself not only had obvious creative tendencies as an academic, writer, and artist, but also explicitly placed a very high value on the act of creation. He publicly describes parts of this philosophy in the lecture that would come to be known as On Fairy Stories. Through the human power of conceiving things not found in primary reality, artists may actually assist in the effoliation and multiple enrichment of creation. And despite its potential for abuse, exercising this power remains a human right. We make in our measure and in our derivative mode, because we are made, and not only made, but made in the image and likeness of a maker. So part of this phenomenon could just be that Feanor and Melkor and their ilk have a power that is highly valued in the world Tolkien invented, one that's acknowledged to be a divine attribute, and possibly the meaning of life. And it's easy to see how such circumstances might lead them to develop terminally inflated heads. But it's worse than that, because not only do Feanor and Melkor become arrogant jerkfaces, they actually grow separated from their own talents until they involuntarily become instead forces of destruction. And I propose that this is not just due to their excessive pride, but because they make a fundamental error about the nature of creativity, one that they are predisposed to make because of their own extraordinary powers of originality. For Tolkien, subcreation is an inherently collaborative act. First and most obvious is his proposal that any action within primary reality must be seen as a collaboration with, if not a divine creator, then at least with the given laws and forces of the universe itself. In Middle-earth, we see that as created beings, neither the Ainur nor Eru's own children, elves, men, and dwarves, can create in a vacuum. They have to operate within the confines of the reality they inhabit, and they can't just opt out and make a new one, as Melkor seems to have been trying to do. Eru drives this home when he tells Melkor, "No theme may be played that hath not its uttermost source in me." Secondly, Tolkien is clear that artistic endeavors can only be deemed truly successful if they allow another to imaginatively inhabit the ideas they communicate. The storymaker proves a successful subcreator if he makes a secondary world which your mind can enter. This is one reason Tolkien is so enchanted by language. Language allows one to translate observations into abstractions, recombine concepts, and then communicate totally novel ideas directly to other minds. Less formally, most people would intuitively agree that art invites sharing. Songs are meant to be heard, art is meant to be seen, devices are meant to be used, poems and stories are meant to be read or spoken. And finally, even if we remove the question of Eru Ilúvatar or any divine creator, the creation of Arda and its ongoing history is designedly and inescapably a collaborative act between all the wills that operate within it. In letters and interviews, Tolkien readily shared the myths and legends that influenced him, but remained suspicious of the tendency to criticize a work of art by examining the artist's psychology and experiences. And this is partly because, for Tolkien, all art is, in some way, derivative, a cocktail of different elements and influences made new by being recombined in novel ways. He compares the existence of common elements in folktales to a cauldron of soup, simmering for centuries, into which different elements are tossed over time. According to Tolkien, it is not necessary, or even useful, to know exactly what elements were put into the soup in order to enjoy the bowl that someone might ladle out for us. Furthermore, it is nonsensical and even dangerous to object that any work of art is derived from works that preceded it, because this recombination is one of the ways creation is eternally renewed. Spring is, of course, not really less beautiful because we have seen or heard of other like events. Like events, never from world's beginning to world's end, the same event. Each leaf of oak and ash and thorn is a unique embodiment of the pattern. Tolkien designed his mythology to showcase this exact quality. Eru could have simply created Arda as an unmediated expression of his own will. Alternatively, he could have created just one other entity to translate his ideas into reality, but he creates instead countless spirits, all with the ability to act as they see fit within the bounds of reality. And then he goes on to add his incarnate children into the mix. As a result, the Ainulindale is not really best understood as a symphony where each player precisely recreates their allotted part according to a pre-made plan. It's more like a jam session, where each player brings a unique twist to a general theme, interacting with and being influenced by those around them. Even unexpected or unwanted interactions can have beautiful effects. Ulmo is a good example of this. When Melkor's excesses interfere with his idea of liquid water, Eru points out to him the beauty of clouds and ice. Ulmo is not only delighted by this, but he sees it as an opportunity to engage in further collaborations with his friend Manwe. "Truly water is become now fairer than my heart imagined. Neither had my secret thought conceived the snowflake, nor in all my music was contained the falling of the rain. I will seek Manwe that he and I may make melodies forever to thy delight." Neither Ulmo nor Melkor would have thought of these ideas on their own. It was the unforeseen collision of water with extreme temperature that creates something totally unexpected. But while Ulmo rejoices, Melkor remains resentful that his ideas cannot be wholly extricated from the influences of others. Unable to make a reality that would be entirely his own, and prioritizing the originality of his own thoughts over the potential to work in harmony with others to create truly novel and unlooked-for effects, his next move is to try to assert his will over Arda by claiming it as his realm. Though Melkor is the eldest and most powerful of the Valar, Manwe challenges his right to make this claim, saying, "This kingdom thou shalt not take for thine own, wrongfully, for many others have labored here no less than thou." And while this is undeniably true, Melkor is so incensed by it that he spends all his efforts to counteract the creations of his brethren, until spite becomes his sole motive and destruction his main goal. Feanor's story is different from Melkor's in many ways, but most of the same elements appear in some form. His objections to the phonological shifts adopted by the Noldor have many petty and vengeful motives, but one of them is an objection to other wills and tastes meddling in a field where he's used to his opinions and devices being supreme. It's the same resistance to collaboration and evolution that characterized Melkor's behavior before the creation of Arda. The Silmarils he creates are objects of great beauty, notable because they can give off their own independent light, but they are most captivating when other lights shine upon them. They rejoiced in light and received it and gave it back in hues more marvelous than before. Yet as Feanor grows more jealous, the Silmarils were guarded close, locked in the deep chambers of his hoard in Tirion. For Feanor began to love the Silmarils with a greedy love, and grudged the sight of them to all save his father and his 7 sons. He seldom remembered now that the light within them was not his own. Effectively, Feanor becomes so obsessed with ensuring the Silmarils' beauty remains a pure reflection of his own thought that he handicaps their potential power. Finally, like Melkor, Feanor reaches a point of no return when asked to give up his Silmarils for the good of Valinor. While Feanor's creation of the Silmarils was a genuinely novel and impressive act, the light he captured was the light of Yavanna's creations, the 2 trees, and it's Yavanna herself who's now asking that he return some of that light so that she can revive her masterpieces. Yet Feanor proudly denies that anyone has a right to his creations, overlooking that nothing he has made is wholly a product of his own thought. There's even the suggestion that the uniquely beautiful hair of his niece Galadriel is what gave him the idea for the Silmarils in the first place. Having denied the legitimacy of any other creator's claim to his work, Feanor then decides that he has the right to use others' works for his own purposes, stealing the Tolarian swanboats just as his own Silmarils were stolen, even as Olwe argues that he has no right to them. "We learned not that craft from the Noldor, but from the Lords of the Sea, and the white timbers we wrought with our own hands. These are to us as are the gems of the Noldor, the work of our hearts whose like we shall not make again." In stealing these ships, Feanor exhibits an attitude very reminiscent of Melkor's. And in keeping with this attitude, Feanor soon decides he must destroy the ships to keep anyone else from using them to challenge his authority. In another parallel to Melkor's experience, he finds that this action turns against him, because in at least one version of the story, in burning the ships, he accidentally kills his own son. Even as he lies dying, realizing the flaws in his beliefs and the futility of his actions, Feanor rebinds his sons to a possessive, cruel, and fundamentally erroneous course of action through their oath, which ensures both their torment and the tremendous and unnecessary suffering of many others. Despite finally understanding that his solipsism is a violation of the very laws of nature, he cannot resist the final temptation to bend others to his will instead of giving them the freedom to act on their own. This contrasts with Aule's despair when he understands the dwarves he has made will never be anything more than expressions of his will, and compares, not very favorably, with Melkor's attempt at stripping elves and men of their innate autonomy, which resulted in orcs, among other things. One of the many traits that made Feanor and Melkor so mighty to begin with was how good they were at so many different modes of creation. Melkor is said to have the greatest gifts of power and knowledge, and he had a share in all the gifts of his brethren. The other Valar have their own spheres of mastery. Tulkas is the strongest, Varda the most beautiful, etc. But Melkor's uniqueness was in his versatility. He may not have mastered any one field of his own, but he knew enough to be competitive in all of them. Similarly, though his brother Fingolfin has the greatest physical strength and Finarfin has the greatest wisdom, Feanor was the mightiest in all parts of body and mind. In valor, in endurance, in beauty, in understanding, in skill, in strength, and in subtlety alike, of all the children of Iluvatar. In both cases, what distinguishes them is their ability to excel in any field they chose. It seems to me that this cross-disciplinary quality would have led to a great capacity to innovate by combining concepts that would normally require the collaboration of multiple minds. But this very quality meant that they believed, as the more limited and specialized members of their families would not have, that they really could do it all. Not being as dependent on the collaboration of others is what led to their misbelief that their ideas were really their own. It's only once they've made this fatal mistake that it makes any sense for them to be proud of their creations themselves, and from there it is easy for them to assume that their ideas are superior to those of others. and acting on this assumption inevitably leads to widespread tragedy. In light of these two characters, along with the many others who share parts of their arcs, Tolkien's oft-repeated dictum that evil cannot create but only destroy takes on a new light. The act of attempting to create something wholly one's own, in violation of the laws of collaboration to which even Eru has voluntarily subjected himself, is not only impossible, it alienates one from their very faculties of creation. Melkor and Feanor are both given chances to repent, to allow the input of others to renew their sterile fixations and create truly new ideas that no one person could have come up with independently. Both reject these chances to double down on their belief that isolating themselves is the only path to true originality, and both suffer the degradation of their personality to the point that they become the antithesis of creation, leaving only regret, suffering, and despair in their wake. Their greatest and most terrible similarity is this shared legacy. If you enjoyed this video, collaborate with that like button to create a wholly original and inimitable upvote. Consider subscribing if you don't want to end up trapped in the dark vault of your own mind, and think my videos might shed refreshing light on your eyeballs. And thank you so much for watching.